don't want to hear the refrain. Focus. We on a ship riding through the focus. And though the tide is rough, we gon' make it through. No matter financial status shake. So when I say focus, it's serious business, no hocus pocus. When election time come wrong again, block your ears, tell them you don't want to hear the refrain. Focus. We on a ship riding through the focus.
Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. I love that song there from Tizay O'Connor. It's called Focus, and I think that's apt for this next conversation we're about to have. I want to welcome back to the show Mr. Richard Solomon, Managing Director of Development Consulting Center Limited. This morning we are chatting about customer service and national development. Do the two go hand in hand?
Yeah, well, good morning, and it's good to be back. They're related. If you think
Are
about,
they first cousins? Are they siblings?
I would say siblings.
Okay.
Because if we are not providing good service, that usually means we are inefficient. And if we are inefficient, then we would be inefficient at developing our nation as well, all elements of it.
Do we provide good customer service?
Generally in this country, we are not particularly interested in the whole issue of customer service. There are pockets where individuals and then some organizations, they are stellar. But if you were to take the temperature of the whole nation, no, that's not something we shine at. It really isn't.
Why not? What do you think the challenge is when it comes to customer service in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, it's accountability, one. I don't think people take on this as a real issue. Plus, we have this challenge of the lack of consequences. So if I am treated in a particular way, if 1,000 of us are treated in a particular way and we were to complain, then very rarely anything happens. Is it even mentioned? What is the implication for the individuals involved, or the organizations, or the supervisors or managers involved? Very often nothing. People hold their jobs, they continue on as normal. Somebody might do a little customer service training program, but that's a checkbox, and it doesn't really always impact the organization significantly.
So we need accountability, we need consequences.
Yeah, of course.
Is this let me step back a little bit, because I want to know, if when you say pockets, right? Is it pockets of it where it's actually working? Is that more private, more public sector?
I would say more in the private sector, because the private sector has the profit motive to protect.
Right.
Yeah. So I've gotten instances of good service in the private sector. Now, to be fair, I've also gotten some in the public sector, but if I were to weigh it, generally the public sector is worse.
How do we motivate them? How do we give those consequences? What's missing from the equation?
Yeah, so it's a few things. We have to hire the right people, one. And that's not enough, of course. We need leaders who actually lead. We need supervisors who actually supervise. If you're on the floor, I don't know, we go to whichever organization, and there's a line that goes out the door. If I'm the supervisor, my first question is why? To somebody, I'm going to want to investigate this. If I'm in an office and I hear two employees shouting back and forth at each other and having an argument in full view of the customers, these are real things I've experienced.
We've seen the videos.
Full view. Somebody has to intervene. That argument can't peter out naturally and just people go about their business as if nothing happened. But a lot of times we don't have that. There's no intervention, and it just continues on, and it's almost as if, well, we just have to accept that. In some cases, we actually do have to accept it, because, well, where else do we go to get a passport or a driver's license?
So what do we do?
Right.
Is it hopeless?
No, it's not hopeless. One, there must be consequences. Two, above the consequences, we have to decide, what does good service look like? And we have to measure it. We have to keep measuring it. And where we find gaps, we have to use those gaps to decide on, okay, what actions will we take? Whether that is hiring, whether that is making those consequences felt on the individual or the organization or the department. It can't just be that I am paying to be treated badly. It can't just be that I have to pay you to repeatedly come back to you, for six of you to tell me 6 different things for one process, and I'm spending days. Don't forget that this comes back to corruption as well, because if I have to do that 6 times, then for some people it's not too hard to pass something over here and say, let's just get it out of the way. And immediately you can see how this has a national impact, because you have all these people all over the country. Companies have said in departing this country, this place is just too hard to do business. And that's a service issue. Yeah.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because it seems to me as though, and I've heard people say this, where the system is set up to be like that. The system itself, whatever system people refer to, is set up so that you have to come back, so that you have to engage.
But we are highly bureaucratic. But that's normal in organizations. Organizations become very bureaucratic over time. But I think it's more than just the system. I think we have masses of people who hold the rest of us, including political leaders, to ransom. It's very difficult to get these animals, I mean the grouping, not the individuals, I'm not referring to people as animals, but the grouping and the collective to be healed and behave the way it's supposed to behave, because we have a long history of allowing people to behave how they're not supposed to and rewarding them for it. You know, so it's not something that you could take on in a sort of a piecemeal way, and it's not just a training problem. People think that if you do customer service training, then all will be well. No, you need systems that work well. You need leaders that lead well. You need supervisors that hold people accountable. We need to have the conversations that say, well, no, you can't be allowed to treat people this way. We have to change this. I remember going to Cayman Islands, for example, and I remember the deputy governor saying to me, Richard, we sell service here. Why should anyone come to the Cayman Islands versus the Bahamas or Bermuda? We don't have anything special. We have the same sun, sea, sand. What we sell here is service. This is a place where it's the standard for registering a company is 48 hours. And if you want a rush, it's 4 hours. This is real. Try that at the Ministry of Legal Affairs. And you know, a recent...
Here's my thing, right, Richard, is that we're not selling service.
But that's the problem. What are we selling, Rokas?
We're selling energy.
Yes, but you know what's happening with that dirty energy?
But
it's not sexy anymore.
How it reach dirty energy now, Lord?
Well, that's what the world has said. The world has said the fossil fuels are a problem.
Right.
And so the prices are falling. Many of our fields are brown. It's not so sexy anymore, and it's not special.
Even when we talk natural gas?
Even
bit
that,
sexier?
it's difficult to get. It's deeper in the ground. Yes, it's there, but we can't continue to hold on and wait.
But after all these years of being spoilt by oil, being spoilt by natural gas, being spoilt by the money that it brings in, how do we now revert to service?
Go to the head of the class, because that is the question. That is the question. And spoilt is a good word. We have been royally spoiled as a nation.
Of course.
We get a check because we've got the petrochemicals in the ground. And that's good. But if we look around the world, you will find that there are places in the world with more of that than us that are saying we have to reduce that dependency. We have to ensure that we are an efficient country as a result of that. And you don't get efficiency without good service.
Right.
They go together. And so what it requires, it requires leadership that will say, hold on a minute. We can't just sit and wait for this thing to continue to give us what it has given us. What we must do is ensure that this business, the nation, is efficient, that people can get things done quickly. We are 105 out of 190 countries in terms of ease of doing business. That are good enough. There's a calypso called That Ain't Good Enough. You probably could play it after. Yeah. It's not good enough. Now, people might say, well, Richard, you complain a lot. 105 is not so bad. Yeah, but who are you comparing us to? You know, you don't want to compare against worst in class. So what we have to do is we have to go back to the drawing board in terms of how we set up these institutions and what we measure and what we hold people accountable for. And everybody has to get involved in this. Particularly, we need our trade unions to get involved in this. We want to protect jobs. We live in a world that doesn't need islands anymore. David Rudder sang that in a calypso many years ago. You want to protect jobs, we have to make the nation efficient. This will come back to bite us in the you-know-where if we don't fix it. We need the trade unions involved. We need leaders involved at very senior levels.
This change that you're talking about.
I keep talking about, you realize we come back to the same place.
We come back to the same place, right? How long? How long do we expect to see this change take place? Like, how long do we need it to be actively worked upon before we can see the results of it?
I can't give you a number, but I know it's not a quick fix. We're probably going to have to begin to work over a generation, because some of us, and I'm including myself in that, we've just had a very long time practicing being the wrong way.
And that's the challenge.
Yeah, so right? we have to now say, okay, we're going to work on those who are here, but we're going to work on those who are coming up. Yeah, we're going to work on the new leaders that are coming up and begin this process of just holding people accountable for what they're meant to do. it's going to take a long time because it's not a quick crop, It's
Yeah,
not
but
tomatoes.
how do we measure that change? How do we measure the same thing you're talking about, being able to quantify it and measure it? To
Well,
say,
in every organization, we could figure out what customers want.
Right.
Generally, customers want speed, they want efficiency, they want things done quickly, they want accuracy. I don't want to have to visit wherever 5 times to get the same thing done.
Right.
Because somebody going on lunch, as if we can't schedule a lunch break so that we have coverage. I mean, that's not so hard to do.
You would think, right?
It's not hard to do. But you see, we are complacent. So if we could just identify for every organization, group, institution, whatever it is, what does good service look like here? That's the first thing. So now we have a standard against which to measure. And then we gather data obsessively. That's a thing we don't do a good job at. We gather data and analyze that data obsessively, and then we make meaning of that data. That will tell us where we need to be and where are we. And then we just figure out what are the actions we have to do. This is not rocket science,
So why is it so hard for us to get it right?
Because we do not have a history of doing that, one, and two, the consequences are simply not there. What happens if you, person 1 in ministry 1, tells me one thing, and then person 6 tells me a different thing, and all the 4 people in between told me different? What happens? And I go to a supervisor.
I just end up confused.
You are confused as the customer. We go back and forth. We spend hours and hours in traffic and waiting in lines and so on. And this is a real thing. So
of course,
there's
I
a
went
matter
through this the
that
other day.
we try to figure out and try to fix recently. And we've been trying to fix for 9 months now. And every time you talk to someone, it's something different. Nothing happens. Even if you speak to someone senior, nothing happens. It is as if they will ask you, who tell you that? What do you mean?
Love
Who
that
told
question.
me?
Love
What
that
does that have to
question.
do with the problem that I'm facing? You are giving wrong information. You are slowing down the system. You're stymieing the system. And as a result of that, people are fleeing. People are working around the system. So it feeds corruption. It feeds capital flight. Absolutely. I'm not asking. I'm telling. It feeds corruption. It feeds capital flight. People get up and they leave. Because why? Why spend all this money? We have to fix this, Raucus. Trinidad and Tobago, we have to fix this, because we don't have a backup. There's no backup to gas and oil for us, We don't
Human
have
resource is the backup, so
Well,
that's why we had to fix this.
You're
so
correct.
Tell me, how do we measure the improvement of human resource quickly before we almost out of time?
Right.
But how do we measure the improvement? Because you say we'll take a whole generation
Yeah,
to
it
change
will.
it, right? But
It will.
we can't say, well, it's not happening, no change happening,
Right.
right? How do we measure along the way?
So the same standards that we've talked about before, and knowing where we are, we continue to gather data on that, on those same things, whatever they are. And it's not difficult to do. But we have to keep gathering the data from the customers, from the users, from the system. If you do that, the system and the people in the system will tell you where we are, what is changing and what's not. And that will allow us to be able to tweak the system and improve it. This is not rocket science, What we need is will. This is not hard. What we need is will.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah, well, we have to fix that will part. What we need is a couple leaders who are willing to say, you know what, let's fix this. It'll be uncomfortable, needs to be fixed. We don't have a plan B. This is our plan B. Let's make it happen.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing your wisdom. We look forward to chatting again because I feel like this is an ongoing conversation that we need to continue having in order to help the nation be a better nation.
I'll get an office space here.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Solomon, the Managing Director, Development Consulting Center Limited. We take a quick break and come back with more in our morning show. Stay tuned.
When election time come wrong again, block your ears, tell them you don't want to hear.